Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for part 2 of the intercooler piping build on my right-hand drive Nissan 370 GT. So let's get into it. So I just finished modifying the intercooler mounts that I made previously to a rubber mount. Originally the intercooler was solid mounted. What I've done here, you can see I've cut this sort of an open keyhole shape in the end of the mount there, and what I have here is like a rubber grommet with a sleeve that goes inside it. This is a factory Nissan rubber mount for an airbox, for an intake airbox. Very handy, very simple sort of a design. How these work, you basically just roll the rubber grommet in from the end to where it goes, like so. Once they're in position, you just slide the sleeve in through the front, and that gives you your rubber mount. The intercooler bracket goes against this. There's a washer on the back, so the whole thing is isolated and sits on that rubber mount there. So I'll get the intercooler mounted up and give you a bit of a look. She's now bolted in, as you can see here, onto the rubber mounts, and it's firm, but yet it is flexible. So that is the ideal outcome that we wanted. We wanted to be able to flex the intercooler if we need to, but yet still have it quite positively mounted, which it definitely is. So I'm very happy with that. Bit of a zoom up on the mount there. You can see the rubber mount sitting in behind there. So now we just have that little bit of give in the mount, which is absolutely ideal. So hopefully, if there is any movement in these chassis rails, as far as the vehicle flexing under hard cornering or acceleration or anything, that you are not going to get issues with fatiguing the mounts or anything like that. It should just be a really good solution. That was a really simple, easy thing to do, and one that I think was very worthwhile. So we now have a rubber mounted intercooler. Very nice indeed. Next. Now that I've finished the rubber mounting of the intercooler, I'm now able to move back onto the lower intercooler pipes. These are the charge pipes that come from the outlets of the compressor, and you will remember the compressor pipe coming through in this position here. This is where our air cleaner goes on above it with a bit of an extension to bring it out into here. As you can see, I've got a few bits and pieces on to give me a bit of a position of the front bar to make sure that I don't impede on it anywhere. And this is the piece that I've just made up. I'll just pull it off and I'll give you a bit of a look at it. I currently don't have a coupler for the intercooler here. I've got one ordered. This is just a 2-inch joiner, and often the 2-inch joiners will fit quite neatly inside a 2.5-inch outlet. So that's all I'm doing to give me my sort of position here. It's quite handy, does the job, and I'll just replace it with a prop coupler when it comes in the mail. Righto, so you can see this piece here that I've been working on to connect the two. This is where we would have been last time, intercooler, and this piece under here that I've brought out from the turbo. Now to connect the two of them together, it's really just a process of working out clearances and angles. What's going to get you the best clearance? What's going to get you the neatest, easiest fit up that you can do? For me, this is what worked out. It allows me to position a joiner down here, which breaks the run into 2 sections of pipe, which will allow me to remove them. And that is always a problem, and that is really the only reason why you use silicone couplers. So this section that comes from the compressor can be removed in one piece, and this section here can be removed in one piece. There's no way you could have them joined together in one piece and still be able to remove this section of pipe easily. Hence the reason why you have silicone joiners to begin with. The location is what allows me to just get the easiest removal. I could have put a joiner on here, but it would have made it a little bit harder to get it apart, whereas this way I can just pull them both in the same direction rather than having to pull something apart in one position and then have another coupler 90 degrees, which you're just trying to bend sideways to get it off the coupler, which is a real pain in the bum. So that's why I've done it this way. So this piece here is made up from a single 180. So all I've done is on that side I've used that section of the 180, and then on this side I've cut back to about this angle. So one side I'm using a 90, one side I've cut back on about this angle, a straight joiner in between. The legs have been cut down to suit the lengths that I need. That's a very economical way to do it. Like I say, I haven't had to buy a 90-degree bend, and you know, I'm not sure what that bend even is. It's possibly a 45-ish. But like I say, you can't order mandrel bends to the degree, so you have to do this type of thing. So instead of buying 2 bends and using that to make the pipe up with, all it took is a single 180. So there you go, folks. That's how you use mandrel bends in the most economical way. You work out what you can get out of each section, how many is it going to give you. And 90s and 180s are always a very good thing, because as you can see with this, a 180 will give you 2 90s for not much more than the price of 190, and a 90 will give you 2 45s for not much more than the price of 145. So yes, that's just the way I sort of do it. That's the way most people do it. See, it's really the economical way to do it. I'll slip this guy back on, and I might start setting up around the other side. And as you see, for the moment, folks, no bead rolls, just purely, as I mentioned once before, once you put bead rolls on things, they're a pain in the ass to get them on and off. And at this stage in the build, you know, it's all about bloody assembly and disassembly and checking and rechecking in order to make stuff fit. Since the last video, I have actually made minor modifications to the 2 charge pipes. If you remember from the previous video, the charge pipe on this side came out square off the front chassis. It was more of a 90-degree bend back inside under here where you can't really see. I've since actually remade that lower charge pipe on an angle that gave a more direct path to the intercooler without using a 90-degree bend. And it also fixed up a small issue that I had, which is what started me on the path of remaking the pipe, with a clearance conflict between the radiator bleed valve on the very bottom and also the piping. They were very close to each other, and it just would have been a pain in the bum. And those couple of things were enough to make me just reassess that charge pipe. And like with all this kind of stuff, once you've actually got a piece made up, it's very easy to see what you can do to improve on it, more so than if you have nothing made up and you're trying to build it from scratch. So because I had one pipe already there made up which was close, it was very easy to see what I could do to improve on it in quite an easy fashion. So it's actually perfect now. No clearance issues, everything's where I want it to be. And as you can see from this, the fit up is really, really good. The pipes where they come out, next time I drop or next time I lift the body shell up, you'll be able to see that the pipes now look quite symmetrical where they leave the engine. Whereas before, like say, one was leaving on a 45-degree angle and the other was leaving on a 90-degree angle. And they just looked a little bit different. Now they actually look very similar. I have made slight modifications to the pipe on the other side, just a minor bend on the end because it was pointing slightly downhill where it exited the front chassis, and I needed to pick it up, and it was just easier for me to add a bend with a slight angle on it, which I needed to extend the pipe anyway. So doing it with a slight angle just made everything back into where I needed it. And I have also made a slight modification to the passenger side air intake pipe to the turbo. When I got the body back down and started looking at clearances around the intercooler, I noticed something which I hadn't spotted before. It was the bottom radiator hose position on the vehicle was clashing slightly with the intake pipe for the turbo. So I made a slight modification to that. I slightly modified the radiator hose, and like I say, it was only sort of a little bit of a slight clash, a little bit of a clearance issue, because as you know, everything is super tight on here. So all I had to do was just slightly cut off the insertion point of the pipe where it went into the turbo. I knocked about 20 mil off that and trimmed the radiator hose slightly, and that was all solved and all really good. So far no more clearance issues have come up. I think I've pretty much got the other side set up in the same position as this to be able to do it all and not have any clearance issues. Once I do get all this piping done here, I'm going to put the front bar on. I have had the front bar on previously, but not in this stint. When I previously did the intercooler, I'd mounted the front bar and checked it for clearances. I think. I'm pretty sure I did, and I kind of think I would have, but I don't know 100% for certain. It does look like everything's going to clear. I certainly hope it does, but if it doesn't, it'll only be millimetres here and there, and it won't really affect any of the piping, particularly down the bottom, which I can see has got plenty of clearance. I'm sure the top, if there are any issues, it'll only be on the top, and it'll just be a matter of laying the cooler possibly in more at the top, which I really don't think it will. I'm 99% sure I had the front bar back on when I fitted the cooler originally. The rubber mounts have brought the cooler forward by about 5mm. I don't think that's going to be an issue either, but as I say, I'll get this other lower charge pipe done to the intercooler, and then I'll get the front bar on and just kind of double check all the clearances in this area, and that'll also allow me to work out exactly how much space I've got when I bring the intake pipe through for the pod filters. So I'll move across to the other side and I'll start working out what the go is with this lower charge pipe. So our mission now for this side, folks, is pretty similar to the other side. What we have to do is basically connect the lower inlet on the intercooler to the charge pipe from the passenger side turbo. We'll do the same thing, which is use a 180, cut it in half, use half for one side, half for the other side. Basically what I have to do though, which is what I've done the other side, is I have to tuck it in as quickly as possible because of the brake duct on this side on the front bar. It starts to go in reasonably quickly, and it just creates a little bit of a clearance issue. There is room, but it's always, I'd like to sneak it in as tight as I can, so I have to bring it in across here fairly quickly. Also, just to give a little bit of clearance, if you bump something with the front bar, it's not going to crush your intercooler pipe. So the more you can get stuff tight on the front, always a good thing, just to keep stuff out of harm's way and give you a bit of clearance in case of little minor sort of car park bumps and things like that. So yep, just these two guys connected with this fella. So I'll get this guy in the bandsaw, cut it in half, and work out what we're doing with it. One thing I do have to quickly do, folks, is I just want to knock out the bottom corner of this little flap here, just to give me a little bit more clearance, because this is the position that I want to come through, right on this corner, and I can get by without that piece there. So I'm just going to use the little plastics cutter on my Dremel and just knock that out. I could remove this cable and just use a grinder or a hacksaw or whatever to do it, but I can leave all that in position and just do it with the little Dremel tool, which I'll do right now. It's just that simple, folks. Now just a quick clean up with a power file and it will be job done. And there you go, folks. You'd swear it came that way from the factory. So I've just roughly worked out the first piece. I'm going to go and take this over and cut it in the bandsaw. But due to the shape of it, it's going to be impossible to get this in my regular bandsaw. So I'm going to go and cut it on the flat bandsaw. So I'll bring you over and you can have a look at that. This is just another one of my homemade, home-modified workshop tools. It's an old woodworking bandsaw that I've had for many years. I've modified it with a variable speed DC treadmill motor. It now runs a bimetal blade for cutting steel, and I've made this head for it so it's all supported on rollers everywhere. So it's actually really handy for cutting flat steel and cutting shapes out in aluminium and mold steel and even a bit of stainless stuff. It's a very good tool. So it also gives me the flexibility that I don't get with the drop style cutting bandsaw over here, and this is the sort of perfect example. I can sit something like this on the platform of the bandsaw and just run it off real easy. So let's get this cut, eh? As I said, it is variable speed, so depending on the job that you're doing, you just sort of vary the speed. I can actually still use this as a woodworking bandsaw, not that I really do a lot in the way of woodworking in the Aussie shed, but it's certainly capable of doing it. So we'll kick him up and get this cut. And it's just that simple, folks. Another quick tip for you too, gentlemen, when you're trying to clean up pipe, particularly aluminium pipe, on something like a linisher or a belt sander, it will tend to grab the pipe and want to throw it around while you're trying to kind of clean it up, and it makes it a little bit hard to get it really good. You can see when I'm using this, it's just really easy to hold on to, and it doesn't throw me up that sort of an issue. And the reason being is that I've got a lump of beeswax here, and what I do if I'm starting particularly any aluminium work is I will dress the belt with beeswax, and that does two things. It stops the aluminium particles embedding into the belt, and it also allows smooth usage of the belt. The belt actually slips very easily and allows the grit to slide through the aluminium and still takes the aluminium off particularly well, but doesn't grab hold of it and shake it around. So a bit of beeswax, and it means you get a really nice easy sanding procedure, and when you're all finished you can clean the belt off really easily with either a belt dresser like this. That'll get most of it off, but what I find is if I just continue to use the belt for doing mild steel and stainless steel or whatnot, it basically just cleans itself. So it's really not that big of an issue. To get the beeswax back out of the belt, it will just slowly dissipate with use. I've actually redressed it with the beeswax probably 2 or 3 times since I've been doing this intercooler piping, just to give me that nice smooth feel while I'm sanding. And it just does a fantastic job. Another tip for young players. Alright, let's take this over and have a bit of a look. Alright, so this is our piece of pipe, and we basically want to just duplicate what we have on the other side, which is the pipe coming out of here, running across to this pipe, and then a 90 on that side. So what I'll do here is just set this pipe up. I've just marked it for in and out on the intercooler here with a Sharpie, so that I just sneak past this corner there that we just slightly took out with the Dremel plastic cutter, and then I can reassess this angle. Once I get this right, getting rid of this bead roll allows me to put a coupler on, so I can put it inside the intercooler like I did on the other side, which will help keep the pipe in the right orientation. And then we'll look at the location of the bend and how big a piece we need to put on here, and then we will look at cutting this back to where it needs to be. But for now, I'll just take this over and whip it off with the normal drop bandsaw, and I'll be back. Alrighty, so there's a few bits roughed out. There's our sort of, I don't know, 20-degree angle or something like that, roughly cut to length and in position there. And we've got a 90 and a piece just roughly there. So now I should be able to start lining things up in the right sort of positions. But you see how you start sort of piecing it together. You just start somewhere and just sort of start cutting, and hope if you do fuck something up, it won't sort of cost you a piece. You'll be able to cut it into something else or recut it and it still work. Like I said before, a good rule is to sort of use a 2-cut system where, any kind of major cuts that you do, your first cut is just sort of a tuning up cut to give you a closer representation of what you actually need, rather than trying to get everything in one go, because you often find that it just doesn't work. I think that's roughly where that one needs to be, so I'll cut that now, I'll recheck this, and then I'll work out the position where the coupler's going to be on this section here, which will mean probably cutting this back and then cutting this back. And what I'll probably do is slide a coupler on this section and then go half the thickness of the coupler and then cut it off so that the coupler finishes where the bend starts, and that'll keep me as far this way away from the chassis rail with the coupler as I can be, which chances are the coupler's going to end up slightly under, because there is a bend just under here which I used to straighten out the kink that was in this while it was running slightly off course. So I've just got to be very careful with the position of all that sort of stuff down there. So I think I will go and make 2 cuts on this actually. I'll work this piece out for the coupler, mark it, and I'll cut that at the same time. Alright, so that's these 2 cut to a little bit more of a suitable size. Might just throw a bit of tape on this, just so I've got an extra hand. For positioning. Bit of duct tape, folks. Can't beat it. I've tried all sorts of tapes for all this sort of things. For this sort of thing. Even PET tape was recommended to me by someone years ago because it's a bit more heat resistant. Yeah, it does work and it is more heat resistant, but the problem is the glue on it is shit, so it bloody falls off all the time. It doesn't stick very well. This stuff melts as soon as you sort of touch it, but it holds it. You can stretch the duct tape across things and it pulls all your joints in really tight, and as long as you get your tacks on pretty quick, it's absolutely perfect. I don't have an issue with it. I use it for all sorts of stuff and find it to be really good. Just a really good sort of a universal tape. Now that I've got that, and this piece here is cut to the length that I need, I can then use this to try and find the position on this pipe that comes from the engine bay. Alright, so as long as I line all this up, I should be pretty bloody good. I think that is my spot right there. Sort of double check it. Yep, I think that's the one. Maybe you have to trim it back slightly with a second cut. But I've now got a position on the length of this. This is where our silicone coupler is going to go in that position there. I'll get this pipe out. It should just pull straight out, cut it, put it back in, sort of tape all this together and check it again and see if it's okay. Mark it, put some proper tacks on it, recheck it again, and if it's all okay, we'll weld it out. There we go. And I'll be back. Alright, so that's that cut to length. Just reposition him. See how we went. Now, so I thought this would have been a lot more. That was in about there. I have to check this before I finalise it. I've got a bit of a mark up there on the pipe, and it seemed to be in a slightly different position. But as you can see, we are getting there. All our angles and our alignments and everything are shaping up pretty good. Looks like we need to take at least, so I'd go probably 10 mil off the length of this one. Maybe a couple of mil off this one. I'll take 10 mil off this one and then we'll come back to it. Sorry folks, I skipped ahead a little bit. The battery in the camera went flat, but the battery in Trevor was still fine. So I just kept going. So I'm in a position now where I've just finalised this piece. We were very close before. I had a couple of minor trims of a few millimetres to do. I've welded it out. I've welded out the final join that was just tacked on the end of that piece down there, and you can see that we're, you know, it's looking really good. It's looking really good. So I might just sort of throw it roughly on like the last one. We'll see how we go. Hopefully. There we go. And that's it folks, another piece of the puzzle complete. I will possibly put some little brackets on these pipes, just weld some little tabs or something just to kind of finalise their assembly positions and stop them moving around as far as rattling and stuff goes. That'll be probably something I'll do very late in the game though, just once I get everything together and I know that I've got a dead set handle on everything so that it's all absolutely spot on, but that's pretty good as you can see. So we've now got the outlet from both turbos feeding into the intercooler, and now we need to just work out this top bit. And I happen to have a 2.5 inch 90 degree bend left from the 2.5 inch stuff, and that's what this size is up here. Jumps from 2 to 2.5 on the outlet, and this should give me two pieces. I can just cut that in half and it'll give me two 45s, but I think I need about half that. I think I need about 20 degrees. So what I will do is get a protractor in here and see if I can work out exactly what this angle is going to be, duplicate it onto these two pieces and weld a leg on them, and then see how that starts to pan out. So I think that's the next thing we'll do folks, is we'll work out these angles and we'll cut this piece. So I think I've worked out what is the correct angle to make this this pipe at, and you can see here this is our 90 that we started with. So I've cut it in this position here, and that gives me an angle of about 25 degrees, which is what I've worked out should give me the ideal angle. I've now got a straight piece here that I'm about to weld onto it, and there you go. You can see that now gives me a 25 degree mandrel bend. Absolutely bloody perfect. So what I'll do now is I'll tape this together and I'll check it. Time to see if I've worked the angle out correctly folks. Alright, here's our piece. We go through level and we are looking pretty good actually by the look of that. As you can see, our angle here meets the coupler perfectly. The top of the pipe up here is going in completely level, and it meets the pipe really well. It's just a matter of working out the height of our pipe, which is going to be about there, and pulling it back until we hit that alignment point. I've just left it. They give you a couple of straight pieces in the box, and this is just one of the straight pieces. I've just cut it in half. It's way too long for what I need, and it's just hitting some stuff inside the engine bay. But that is absolutely perfect, ladies and gentlemen. That is absolutely perfect. That's the angle that I want, so that's bloody great. I guess I better check the other side just to make sure that they're both the same. I have no idea whether the factory holes are in exactly the same position and all that kind of stuff, but so far so good. I don't need a huge amount of pipe on this end. The the piping, once it hits the engine bay, once it hits the other side of this airbox, the old airbox position there, it'll be stepping up into 3-inch piping. And the reason I'm going to 3-inch is 3-inch matches the throttle body inlet size perfectly, and using a 3-inch pipe also gives you better resolution with your MAF sensor, with your injector size and everything. So 3-inch pipe in the engine bay, it's a better alternative. You might as well use 3-inch right off the bat. It's proven to be the best way to do it. People don't have issues with 2.5. You can always run different MAFs and all that sort of stuff. I think they use the UpRev GT MAFs. But this seems to be what people have done, and they're still able to use the factory MAFs and are still able to tune for a reasonable size injector and all that sort of stuff. So I'll just test the other side, and then I think I'll just tack this together. It does appear that a slightly steeper angle is required on this side, folks, mainly due to the air conditioning pipes coming through in this area here. They're a little bit in the way, which means I'll have to run the pipe to the very top of the opening here, whereas I've got it more central on the other side, which gets me a little bit lower. But that's no drama at all. It's one of those things, it's very easy to do. So I'll set this one up for the other side. Like I say, I think it's 25 degrees. So I'll work this one out and see what gives me a better thing. I don't want the pipe to be resting on the AC lines there, and just by steepening up that angle it'll glide over the AC lines. That's cool. We'll take this one up and then I'll work this one out with the protractor and set that angle up, and we'll have another look at it. Right folks, I've gotten as far as finish welding this piece of pipe. I did tack it and check it again. It was still just as perfect as it was when it was taped up. So she's all cut to length now and all that sort of stuff, and it's actually ready to go on. So this was quite a long leg 90-degree elbow here, quite a high quality one, and I've cut that down to suit, and now I'm going to fit the pipe. Which way will I go? In first and then down and out, or yeah, it's a little bit tricky. I think I'll go in first and I'll come through the other side. I don't know what I'm going to do in the long run, but should be able to just bring that in from the back and shove her in, like so, and that's it. That's beautiful, dead center, nice and level. Really, really good. Very happy with that. That is exactly where I wanted it. Beautiful. Look at that. Perfect. That's one done. Alright, I'll move on to the other side now, where I've got to just slightly rework that angle, increase the angle slightly to maybe, I don't know, 30, 35 degrees maybe. We shall see. But that is very, very nice. I'm very happy with that. Very happy indeed. Okay, I've finished doing this piece over this side. The revised angle for this side ended up being 37 degrees. That gives me clearance over the AC lines there, and gives me a good sort of direct line into the intercooler. The pipe does have to go up slightly higher in the hole here. There is still plenty of room obviously for it, whereas on the driver's side I had it sitting sort of central and quite low, but all it means is I'll just move it up slightly in the hole and everything should be really good. So we've got, like I say, 25 degrees on that side, 37.5 degrees on this side, and really that's just purely to clear the air conditioning lines. It does look like when I've mounted the intercooler is maybe 5 or 6 mil lower on this side as well, which it all just sort of compounds that difference between the two. So all that's left to do now is to just cut this coupler down so it fits. Obviously you can see the leg's too long in that way, and the leg's also too long in this direction. So I'll cut this fella down and then we'll fit her up. As I demonstrated in the previous video, I think I generally cut these down with a long bladed knife. Part of the secret is in marking them properly, so you get a nice even mark all the way around. I just use my finger on the side of stuff, and just sort of lock whatever you're marking with, and then just sort of roll around, and you'll find you'll get a really nice even mark. But as far as the cutting goes, basically I just get a penetration, which is the trickiest thing. Once you get your penetration, you're pretty right. And as you know, gentlemen, getting that first bit of penetration can be one of the most careful, costly exercises. And once we've got our penetration, then what I generally do is just roll the coupling around the knife. I angle the knife back on this kind of angle, like so, and then just roll the coupling onto the blade. It seems to help the blade move through the angle quite easily, and it gives me a good visual on where the line is in relation to the blade, so I can see exactly where I'm cutting and not veer off the line. It's just a method that I've kind of developed for how I do this sort of thing. It seems to work pretty good. This blade's getting a little bit blunt, so it's not as easy as it is with a new blade, but there you go. Little tiny dag on there, but as you can see from that, it's a very nice even cut. So you can see that's where it was cut from, but if I flip it over to the factory end, you can see that the factory end fits perfectly all the way around, which shows how even the cut is. There you go, folks, just something I thought I'd show you. Just trying to pass on a bit of the old man wisdom to the younger folks out there. Alright, so that's one side of the leg. I'll just fit this on the cooler and mark the other one, and I'll do the same thing. And there it is, folks, all done and dusted. That's the second cooler outlet sorted out in this area, and it's all a pretty good fit. It's all a pretty good fit. Quite happy with that. Obviously the next stage with the intercooler piping, when the outlet from those two pipes then gets routed to the throttle bodies, but that's something that I will leave till fairly late in the piece, until the engine and everything is back in, the inlet manifold mounted, throttle bodies mounted, etc., which is quite a ways away yet. So that's all the intercooler piping done, bar bead rolling all the ends, which once again will be one of the last things I do. I'm probably going to paint all the piping and paint the intercooler. I'm going to paint everything black to make it all as discreet as possible, but again, that's something that'll happen very last. I do still have to extend the air intake piping here. I've got a couple of pod filters that have just sort of been sitting around on the shelf here for a while. I've no idea what brand they are or anything, and I'd planned on using those, but I don't think I will now. That's roughly where I'd like to sit them. Maybe. I'll see. Actually, one of the next things I'm going to do is put the front bar on and just make sure of all the clearances, and that'll actually tell me how much room there is in here, because the sort of fake brake duct thing that sits here actually impedes this way quite a ways. It kind of steps right in that position, but I don't know how much of an issue it's going to be for where the air cleaner sits. And as you saw in the previous video, I still have to try and fit some sort of a washer reservoir in this position. I can always put like an aftermarket one in another position, but I'd really like to retain the original look from inside the engine bay and have the filler neck coming up as per original. So even if I can even bring this down here out of the way, enough room to give me the most that I can as far as a washer bottle on this side. The other side's not really an issue. There's a stack of room over there to kind of do stuff, but this side, like continually is with the car, the driver's side is the absolute pain. There's a good chance I can possibly fit it somewhere like this, maybe, but this is the sort of brake duct area. It depends on how forward that is. It's quite deceiving here with the mounting positions and the bar. Everything's kind of offset. Ideally, if I can mount the pod filter in this position, the pipe work will be sort of coming through there. It gives me this upper area that I can use to make up another washer bottle. But we'll see. We'll see. I think I might throw the front bar on. I think that's probably a good idea, just to double check all these clearances before I move on to anything else. Rightio. As you can see, gentlemen, I've just popped the front bar back on just to check all the clearances. Everything seems to be really good. There was only one small issue with a bit of a tab protruding on the inside of the bar near the sort of top of the grill where the top cooler pipes run back into the engine bay. I just had to trim a little tiny bit of plastic off that on both sides, but really nothing to speak of. Other than that, everything's perfect. There's no issues anywhere. There's good clearance with everything, and it's pretty bloody good. So I'm very happy with how that's gone. So there you go, folks. That's looking pretty good down in there. No clearance issues. It's all just looking pretty sweet. No dramas at all. Alright folks, I think we'll leave this episode here. We're pretty much out of time. Everything's going reasonably well at this stage. So as always, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. Always a pleasure having you here. If you like my content, remember to like and subscribe. And I will see you on the next one. Cheers.